Welcome everyone to today's talk, Soybean and Agri-food resources. It is the 25th talk of a series targeting to promote agrobiotechnology and enhance understanding of the potential applications of agricultural products. We hope the series will inspire international scholars, researchers, farmers, and business in the agricultural field, as well as the interested public. First, let me introduce the speaker, Dr. Coty Carrera, who is a María Zambrano researcher at Physiology Group, University of Lleida, Adjunct researchers at National Council for Scientific and Technical Research, and researcher of the crop Ecophysiology group at INTA. Her area of interest is the study of the ecophysiological basis, with special emphasis on the physiological and genetic determinants of yield and grain quality. Her research has been focused on the environmental and genotypic interaction effects on soybean yield and seed chemical quality by better understanding the physiological and genetic determinants. In this presentation, Coty will cover 4 big topics. First will be world scenarios, climate, yield, and population evolution. Second will be introducing soybean production, processing, and utilization in Argentina. Then defining quality soybean and agri-food resource. At last, she will introduce factors that determine seed quality with a case study. So let's now welcome Coty to the floor. Welcome, Coty, please.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the great presentation. And I need to share. Okay. So.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, I want to make it do you see well my screen?
Yes, full screen, no problem.
Oh, okay. Okay, so first, thank you very much to everybody here, and of course, in first place to Dr. Lam for the invitation to participate. You hear me well? Just tell me if something is not good, eh? You hear me well and you see the presentation?
Yes, loud and clear.
So thank you, Dr. Lam, for the invitation to participate in this meeting and the possibility of sharing with you some experiences of our country, Argentina, related to the soybean value chain. So as Dr. Lam mentioned, first we are going to, yes, sorry? Somebody is talking. Okay, I continue. So first, we are going to contextualize current and future world scenarios in terms of climate, yield, and population evolution. After, we are going to present soybean production, processing, and utilization in Argentina. Then we are going to address the soybean and agri-food research. We are going to define quality. We are going to discuss briefly which factors determine seed quality, and this through a case of a study. We are also going to discuss a little brief about the relationships between protein and oil with seeds nutraceutical composition, mainly focused in total isoflavones and total tocopherols, and this through a synthesis analysis study. And finally, we are going to give some perspective. So let's begin. So the world is experiencing warming, and this is nothing new. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the temperature has been increasing steadily all around the world. And in this following line plot, which shows the yearly temperature anomalies from 1880 to 2014, as recorded by 4 different institutions, you can see that, sorry, there are too many noises. you can see from this figure that the four different institutions agree that there has been a rapid warming in the past few decades, and all show the last decade as the warmest. So what impacts is not the climate change per se, but the precipitate of the change. If we consider the pattern of rainfall distribution in the last 100 years, this is how models have seen mentioned pattern of distribution. And this data corresponds to South America and are part of a report elaborated by the IPCC in 2014. But actually, what has happened is what this black trend line shows, which means that no model has been able to simulate well what happened with rainfall distribution in the last 100 years, at least for South America. Besides, I really like this figure because what are we seeing here is the rate of increase in productivity. That is yield tons per hectare. In black, it's represented corn, in blue rice, in pink wheat, and in green soybean. And dotted lines that you are seeing here show the real yield increases, whereas the solid lines that follow dotted ones show the estimation of yield achievement with current rate of increase. And if you see the dashed lines in all major grain crops that differs from the solid lines, these dashed lines are showing the yield improvement that is required each year to double the food supply by 2050 to meet the challenges of the growing population without bringing additional land under cultivation. And it seems apparent from this figure that yield trends will be insufficient to double global crop production by 2050. And this might be a problem because nowadays we are more than 7,000 million people, and this is expected to rise by 34%. Then we are going to reach more than 9,000 million people by 2050. So from these nowadays 7,000 million people, 805 million are undernourished. What means this? That their energy consumption is continuously below the minimum that is required for maintaining a healthy life. And as you can see in this first figure, the region of the world with the highest number of people under this condition is South Asia. And in the second figure, we can see that the sub-Saharan Africa, highlighted in red, is the region of the world with the highest percentage, more concentrated, of people under poorly fed people, yes? So, on the other side of the same coin, it is well documented that as the purchasing power of the population grows, the amount of meat and calories consumed also increase. And the functions that relates both the meat and calories consumption to the purchasing power are relatively similar all around the world. Of course, there are some exceptions, as you can see here in the first figure. For example, India, which exhibits lower increases in meat consumption. And in the second figure, China, which exhibits lower increases in empty calories consumption. Empty calories are those that are not accompanied by vitamin and proteins, and to a greater purchasing power. So based on this information, it is estimated that the increase in the purchasing power of the population will result in increasing of about 42% of the mean annual consumption of meat per individual and increases of 11% in the amount of calories demanded daily for consumption per individual between 2010 and 2050. Thus, it emerged the following question: how can we satisfy protein demands that are estimated to be bigger than current ones? So we think that Argentina has a great opportunity in this regard if we consider that we are positioned as the third world soybean producer of this grain, after, of course, the States and Brazil. In Argentina, the soybean crop area shown in this figure has been increasing steadily since the late 90s, this coinciding with the introduction of the commercial use of GMO, transgenics, and reaching 17 million hectares in the last growing season. This means an increase of about 140% respect to the 7 million hectares of growing season 97-98. So in the same period, the physical grain production also increased 132%, passing from 19 to 44 million tons. So when we think on how is this production distributed in our country, Argentina, we need to take into account that soybean crop covers a wide ecological area that moves from 23 to 39 degrees southern latitude. Yes, so this represents a very wide range of climatic conditions, but with more than 70% of the production, this that I'm showing here is the rolling pampas in our country and is the main producing area. In the whole soybean crop area of Argentina, different maturity groups ranging from 2 to 9 find suitable conditions with many planting dates that go from September to February. But nowadays, and thanks to the effort that has been made in terms of genetic improvement, these maturity groups have been limited to 3 to 6. And this is advantageous because it allowed broad adaptation to different regions and also to the different management practices followed by the farmers in our country. When we think on who is leading the soybean breeding in Argentina, this bar graph here is showing that in soybean, but also in the all other major grain crops such as corn, sunflower, wheat, sorghum, the private seed companies are leading the breeding investment in our country. And since 2000 to 2020, that is 20 years, we recognize that there are at least 15 private companies that are most listed in this list, and are mainly of local development that are leading this investment. But we also recognize that there are 2 public institutions making a slightly contribution to these breeding programs. One is the Obispo Colombres Experimental Station, located in north of the country in Tucumán province. And the other is the National Institute of Agricultural Technology, which is spread across the whole country. And they make some slightly contribution. to the breeding programs. This figure here is only to commend you on one of the biggest problems faced by breeders, company or breeding programs in our country. That is the low percentage of legal seed zone over the total zone. From the total zone in Argentina, only 24 to 27% is sown with legal, with legal seed. This is discouraging for breeders, but despite this discouraging context, soybean breeders have been very active in the development of new varieties. As you can see in this figure, in this bar figure, where what is showing is the evolution in the number of new varieties officially registered per year in our country, Argentina, since 1982 to 2020. And you can see that in 2020, there have been 40 new varieties officially registered. Okay, in terms of what type of soybean do we sow in our country, with about 24 million hectares cropped in Argentina, that represent 13% of the global transgenic area, Argentina is positioned as the third largest GMO crops producer after the States and Brazil. And we can say that nowadays we are at the roof of this technology adoption, since most of the soybean, almost 100%, we can talk about this later, there are now the non-transgenics are gaining a little space in the soybean crop area, but we are at the roof of this technology adoption. So almost 100% of soybean that is shown in this bar graph in green, and all cotton highlighted in blue, and almost the 98% of corn highlighted in orange in this graph that are grown in Argentina are transgenics. And the very fast adoption of this technology by the farmers have been encouraged by some advantages that I'm listing here. For example, lower cost, greater flexibility in crop management, decreasing the use of insecticides, higher yields, and better quality, among others. So in Argentina, with our production, we process it mainly locally, most of this production, around 75%. And then we export 82% of this processed soybean. If we consider 2020 production, which was around 45 million tons, sorry, some slides are in Spanish, but if you follow me, you will understand here is a mistake, because here is the soybean production, or these 45 million tons are from 2020-2021 production. So from these 45 million tons, around 8 million tons are exported as grain, and almost 4 million tons are exported as seeds, balance, and others, of course, adding no value to the production. The rest, 34 million tons, are crushed into meal, 27 million tons, and into oil, almost 7 million tons. We also produce and export biodiesel. So with these numbers, Argentina is positioned as the third world exporter of grains after Brazil and the States, and the main one by products, meal and oil. And it's very important to mention to you that the soybean complex accounts for 50% of the Argentine agribusiness exports. But I always like to highlight that soybean is more than just meal and oil. The chemical composition of its grains makes the soybean an agri-food resource that is key for human and animal nutrition. As you may know, on average, the soybean grains present 42% of protein, 33% of sugars, and 20% of oil. Of course, this varies, this chemical composition of the grain will vary according not only to the genotype, but also to the environment explored by the crops during its growth, especially during the seed filling period where all the chemical components accumulate, and of course the interaction between both environment and genotype. The functional properties, the oxidative stability, and the nutritional value of oils in general are determined by their fatty acid composition. Soybean oil is composed of around 64% of polyunsaturated fatty acid, mainly linoleic, but also, very important, linolenic. And these are necessary in a smaller scale for direct human consumption. Why? Because these fatty acids are essential fatty acids that must be supplied to the organism through food of plant origin and are super important for growth and reproduction. The soybean oil also contains 22% of monounsaturated fatty acid, which is necessary for food preparation, for the oil and biodiesel industry. Why? Because this confers the oil with low oxidation capacity, heat stability, and extends its shelf life. The oil also contains other minor components that are called tocopherols, most known as vitamin E. These are beneficial to health, and also beneficial to health are the isoflavones present on the meal. A special mention deserves the high protein content of high biological value given its balanced composition in essential amino acids of low relative cost. So now, moving towards which factors determine seed quality, we are going to address this through a case of a study. But first, we need to understand what we are talking about when we talk about quality. Quality, of course, is a broad, dynamic concept which definitions depends on the end use of the product. So considering that in Argentina, you may know that the soybean is cropped mainly under rainfed, but also under very contrasting conditions in terms of rainfall or precipitation, temperature, and solar radiation. Thus, we conducted a study a few years ago to determine if within the Argentine soybean region, there will be more favorable environment for obtaining products of a certain quality. We analyzed 6 genotypes in multi-environment field trials conducted at 8 experimental stations of INTA spread across the whole soybean crop area, as you can see in this map. We repeated these experiments during 2 years, and we used 2 sowing dates per locality, and that gave per year, sorry. So that gave us 23 environments that were analyzed. The main outcomes, the main results of this study are summarized in this figure, which is called a biplot, that allows us to visualize environmental correlation between soybean seed components of 6 genotypes evaluated in 23 environments that are the cycles that you see of different color, and environments that were spread across the whole soybean crop area in Argentina. So in that opportunity, we found that warm environments, those with an average daily mean air temperature between 22.5 to 25 degrees, promote higher oil concentration of low oxidation capacity due to their higher oleic to linolenic acid ratio, and which is very important for the oil and biodiesel industry. And these environments also promote higher vitamin E content, mainly alpha tocopherol. In contrast, temperate to cool environments, those with an average daily mean air temperature between 17.5 to 22.4 degrees, promote higher total isoflavone, higher total tocopherol content. This environment also promote the obtainment of oil with higher concentration of essential fatty acid, linoleic and linolenic, which are all these products are very important and required for the nutraceutical industry. And this environment also promote higher protein concentration, which is super important for the milk industry. Okay, we can then discuss more about this very interesting figure. Now, it is of great interest while studying or trying to understand the seed chemical composition of this interesting crop, soybean, to understand how the different chemical components are related to each other. Thus, now we are going to address the nutraceutical soybean composition relative to protein and oil. And this through a synthesis analysis study that was conducted in collaboration with Kansas State University during pandemic 2020, when I was stuck in the States. Okay, so first we need to understand what means nutraceutical. Perhaps not everybody knows, but nutraceuticals are bioactive compounds that are extracted from plant origin, and in addition to their nutritional value, they also are beneficial to health. So first, in this synthesis analysis, we conducted a literature search for the database compilation. And we were looking for peer-reviewed journal articles published over past decades. Basically, or in other words, we were looking for papers containing the following 4 variables simultaneously: protein and oil concentrations, protein and oil contents, total isoflavone contents, total tocopherol contents. And the first issue we faced while doing this research was that only two papers reported simultaneously on these 4 mentioned variables. Of course, yielding insufficient data for addressing the objective of our work. So we generated 2 databases, one comprising the protein and total isoflavone content, involving 12 studies from Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Korea, and the States. And the second database, comprising oil and total tocopherol content, involving 5 studies from Argentina, China, and the States. And since not all studies reported simultaneously on seed weight, then the number of cases for protein and oil concentrations varied within each database, as you are seeing here. Okay, so moving towards the main outcomes of this study, first, I will, before describing the results in these figures, I would like you to consider 2 aspects of the following figure that you are seeing in the screen. So, in the first panel, what you are seeing are the relationships between total isoflavone content in the seeds versus protein concentration and versus protein content. And in the second panel are showing the relationship between total tocopherol content in the seeds versus oil concentration and versus oil content. And in all 4 figures, you see this line, which is the upper boundary lines highlighted in red, indicates the maximum protein or the maximum oil in a way that the total isoflavone or total tocopherol are limiting by factors other than protein or oil, respectively. In contrast, in green, it is highlighted the lower boundary lines in all 4 figures, and these indicate maximum total isoflavone or maximum total tocopherol dilution, being protein or oil the main limiting factor for total isoflavone accumulation or total tocopherol accumulation. So, it will make sense when we move and describe the results. But I wanted to explain that because these perhaps are not very common, not very common figures. So first, we found a positive association between total isoflavone content and protein concentration, but this positive association was found up to 35% of protein concentration. Above the increase in protein concentration, above this 35% in concentration, increases in protein were not followed by increases in total tocopherol isoflavones. Perhaps due to the frequently reported trade-off between both traits in the literature. But before the 35, there was a significant association between both traits. We also found a positive association between total tocopherol content in the seed and the oil concentration, even at high level of oil concentration, more than or above 20% of oil concentration. Interestingly, when we expressed both protein and oil relationships, but in terms of their content, we found a positive and significant association between total isoflavone content in the seed and the protein content, and a no significant one between total tocopherol and oil content. We observed that the variation of total tocopherol were of around 151% in the range of oil content variability, which were considerably lower than the above 3,000% of variation of total isoflavone in the range of the protein content variations. Thus, total isoflavone presents 22% more variability than total tocopherol. This narrow variation in total tocopherols in the whole range of oil content explored in the synthesis analysis could be pointing towards this, that there will be limited opportunity for further increasing total tocopherol content in soybean seeds. When comparing these two relationships, the first one is the total isoflavone versus protein concentration, and the second one is the total isoflavone to protein content. We observed here, I highlighted in red, that the accumulation of total isoflavone increases were lower in the second relationship, the total isoflavone to protein content, which suggests that physical limits may exist for total isoflavone increments in the range of high protein level. We will return to this later. So we further studied soybean seed composition changes relative to seed protein as an independent variable. Why? Because seed weight is a very useful variable that integrates from an ecophysiological perspective, because seed weight, you must take into account that integrates the physiological responses in a way that changes in seed weight are closely related to variations in seed chemical components. So in this synthesis analysis, we found that above 258 milligrams per seed increases in seed weight were accompanied by increases in protein concentration. So the protein concentration continued increasing with seed weight, accumulates, concentrates. But we observed that the total isoflavone accumulation per unit of seed weight were less than proportional. This highlighting a dilution, a clear dilution effect. So the dilution effect observed for total isoflavone content in the high range of seed weight proposes biological limitation to its accumulation that, as you can see, are not related to physical restriction, because there is a still site in that way, in that grain, to accumulate these nutraceutical compounds. Instead, it could be related to the environmental conditions, for example, explored by the crop during the seed filling, or genetic factors such as linkage or pleiotropic effects, trait-by-trait interaction. We don't know. We don't know. We need to continue studying. And to respond this, of course, we need to make experiments, because these databases are not designed to respond this. But we know that in the high range of seed weight, protein concentration continues accumulating while the isoflavone content diluted. We also found in this synthesis analysis that oil concentration and total tocopherol contents in the seed decreases with increases in seed weight, a negative relation between oil concentration and seed weight, and total tocopherol and seed weight. But total tocopherol content decreases in a higher rate compared to oil concentration, exhibiting both traits, dilution with higher seed weight. So we proposed it in this synthesis analysis, a comprehensive scheme summarizing or highlighting the main interrelationship between seed nutraceutical in soybean, mainly total isoflavone and total tocopherol, with the major seed components, protein and oil, concentration and contents. through an ecophysiological perspective, since we included in our analysis seed weight. Remember that seed weight is a very useful variable integrating physiological processes and is very often overlooked in most of studies addressing the seed chemical composition of soybean grains. So let's start with this comprehensive scheme that summarizes that all were we talking about before. So we found a linear and positive association between protein concentration and seed weight. We found, or we fitted, a quadratic model for total isoflavone and seed weight, indicated that total isoflavone rate increases less proportional with increases in seed weight. And in other words, for similar range of seed weight, total isoflavone is diluted due to a lower deposition of relative to protein concentration. We also found that oil concentration and total tocopherol were negatively associated with seed weight, being the decreases in the rate of accumulation of total tocopherol higher compared to the oil concentration. We found a positive and significant association between total isoflavone content and protein concentration up to 35% of protein, above which increases in protein concentration were not followed by increases in total isoflavone accumulation. Remember, possibly due to the frequently reported trade-off between both traits in the literature. We found a positive and significant association between total tocopherol and oil concentration, even at high levels of oil concentration, above 20%. And interestingly, when we expressed both protein and oil relationship, but in terms of their content, there was a positive and significant association between total isoflavone and protein content, and a not significant one between total tocopherol and oil content. The lack of relationship between these both traits, total tocopherol and oil content, could be pointing towards compensatory effects due to the responses, the opposite responses of total tocopherol to oil concentration, with this positive, and total tocopherol with seed weight that is negative. Okay. So the main outcomes from this synthesis analysis are that relationship of total isoflavone to protein concentration was positive. However, for the upper boundary, total isoflavone decreases with increases of protein. Relationship of total tocopherol to oil concentration was positive but inconsistent when oil was expressed in terms of its content. And as seed weight increased, total isoflavone accumulation was less than proportional relative to protein concentration, and total tocopherol decreased more proportional relative to oil concentration. So, finally, moving or giving some perspective, we need to understand the responses of soybean to adverse weather events, to develop management strategies aimed at mitigating the negative effects associated with climate change. We also need to address interaction between nutraceutical components with agronomical relevant traits such as seed weight, protein, and oil. These two, protein and oil, need to be quantified in terms of their contents. Why? Because this will provide insight into the physiological mechanism underlying seed quality metabolism. And it's of high priority to continuous studying seed chemical composition of this grain, because we need to promote production differentiated by primary product quality. Providing only commodities is not enough. The future of this crop growth depends on the production of special soybeans for the opportunity of niche markets. I personally strongly believe that we need to be collaborative and cooperative in order to achieve the goals. So thank you very much.
So good. So now we can start to entertain questions. So anyone want to say something first?
Nice to meet you all. Okay, good. Thank you so much for the beautiful presentation from beautiful speaker. Okay, so their presentation is very informative and knowledgeable. So I have two questions. The first one, how to protect their legal interest of breeders in Argentina when there are percentage of legal seed was only about 30%.
Okay.
We have the same problem in China. So some farmers they propagate their seed by themselves. So it's a big problem for the breeders in many countries. So I want to share your experience and suggestions.
Okay, I thank you for the question. Is as you mentioned, is a very serious problem, because you know that discourage the breeders to continue the improvement of seeds, and it's very difficult to control, because as this is it's not like corn that you must to buy each year the seeds. Then the farmers keep a percent and they continue reproducing, but they are working very hard in a law that regulates when they buy the seeds. For example, there is a technology called INTA from what was Monsanto. Now it changes the name of the company. But so the farmers buy this INTA technology, and then when they sell the production, they can control in the percentage. The companies can control which percentage they sell, or which percentage they keep, because the first year you buy, the second year, if you are selling the technology, if you produce this and you didn't buy the seeds, it means that you kept a percentage, and they can test that this is the INTA technology while doing an easy test. I don't know too much about this, but they can confirm if the farmer have kept the seed without declaring that. So, but this is a specific case, because not the INTA is not the most sound technology, no. So I think, as long as I know, they are still working on regulation, because it's very difficult to control.
So it will be still a problem for our breeders. I'm a breeder, so I'm so not happy to know that the farmers do not buy seeds from me and companies. So
yeah.
our second question.
I laugh, but it's sad, you know, because I reckon I'm not a breeder, but I work with breeder, and it's very hard, the work for the time needed to develop a new variety. It takes a lot of effort and time, so it's very bad, the situation. That I wanted to show, to give a big picture of, not only focus in the academic result, but also in the main picture, because not everybody know Argentina, not everybody know what we do there.
So in China, I just made an investigation to the farmers in no-seed China, their percentage of legal seed is about 60%. 6%. There are more and more farmers know that they can get benefit if they buy seed from their companies, because their seed companies can process seeds with a good quality. Okay, second question. So just you mentioned that some big companies, some big giants, just like the former Monsanto, okay, they have big power in their biotech. So in China, some people see that their seed industry in Latin America was controlled by their big giant like Monsanto. I know, but on the other side, I know that you have many female, very good breeders. Okay, just like breeders in their down the road. I visited the company. So it is true now that the seed industry in Latin America was controlled by Monsanto, or not? It's not true now.
It's a very good question, because I didn't mention, but I can share. So because we have a very good known company. A ver, if I can move. A ver. Wait, give me a second. I want to stop the, well, I cannot move. Here I show you the list, because Monsanto is important, but we have this company. You see Don Mario. We have this is, a ver, Monsanto. No, but here is not in the list, but it's the most important, the company that nowadays is it used to be Nidera, but the company that nowadays leads the breeding programs in Argentina here is Don Mario. And they are.
Don Mario is number one in North America, yes?
Yes, they now they have expanding to North America, but they are from Argentina. They are Argentine, and they are expanding. And you know, we also produce. I only mentioned the transgenics crops, because it's more 96% of our surface is owned by transgenic, but we also produce a low percentage, that is 200,000 hectares in Argentina nowadays are sown with no transgenic. And the main variety sown of non-transgenic is also by Don Mario. Don Mario 48 is the variety. And they are also leading. Most sown varieties in Argentina are from Don Mario, not Monsanto or Syngenta, that also are very important programs, not local programs. They are breeding programs. Yes.
So they have large scale of the breeding program. I visited the company, very good company, with many very good breeders. Thank you very much for your answers.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Temple. So, another questions? Sandra, you raise your hand. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for the amazing talk. I'm especially intrigued by a few points, such as how the definition of grain quality depends on the application of it, etc. I would like to ask a few questions. Firstly, you mentioned that environmental factors would also impact the protein, oil, and isoflavone content of the seeds. So I want to ask, in Argentina, what kind of environmental factors have been examined? Is it temperature or precipitation, etc.? And secondly, I want to ask about since right now, at least right now, there is a call for perhaps sustainable farming that use less agrochemicals and perhaps some so-called soil-friendly practices such as lower till, etc. May I ask about, is there a paradigm shift or at least a rise of such awareness or practices in Argentina? Thank you.
Okay. So Sandra, then you repeat me the second question, but now I'm focused in the first one. So thank you very much because when you design, when one prepare the presentation, you know that the time is limited, so you cannot tell everything in the during the presentation. I was wondering, wishing that someone asked me about this. In this particular study, but we have published after this study several one and before also, we here the environments are classified due to the average daily mean earth temperature. But how did we arrive to the classification of the environment due to the temperature average daily mean? We tested, we have the data of all these environments, or were characterized in terms of the solar radiation. We don't use only the precipitation because, you know, when precipitation comes, the crops doesn't use 100% of that precipitation. So we use it a more powerful or more, yes, powerful variable that integrates better the balance. So we use the precipitation minus the potential evapotranspiration, what is actually what crops use. So we tested solar radiation, precipitation minus potential evapotranspiration, and the temperature. We ran or conducted regression analysis where we tested these environmental variables against each of the chemical components presented in this figure. And we found that the temperature, that the average daily mean earth temperature during the seed filling was the best predictor for all the analyzed chemical components. And we used a statistic called Mallow's CP, which indicated that the temperature was 10 times stronger than the solar radiation and the balance, the water balance, in predicting each of these chemical components. So that's why in this study, the environments were classified in terms of the temperature. But in another works that I can share with you after the talk, we also study the temperature during the average daily mean earth temperature during the seed filling, and also the precipitation minus potential evapotranspiration, because we noticed that the well-known relationship between temperature and the different chemical components change due to the drought stress. And with this precipitation minus potential evapotranspiration, we estimated a kind of drought stress indicator. And we published those results in several works for isoflavones, for oil and protein, also for fatty acids. And that's, I don't know if that responds to your question. And the second question, I don't remember, sorry.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that answers my question. And actually, I have a follow-up question on the first question first. So is there any measurement of, because I'm quite interested in soil ecology in farming and agriculture. So may I ask, is the soil type or the geology of the farmland in Argentina quite homogeneous, or are there, has it been considered in the studies in terms of environmental variation?
Well, Sandra, very good question again. You are right. The soil is a very important environmental factor that change condition. Of course, with that big size of the Argentine cropped area, the soil will differ, soil condition will differ between environments. But in that opportunity, we only have a session to the environmental, refer to climatic condition. So it will be super interesting to advance in knowledge, studying how the soil quality affect to this seed chemical composition. I started a kind of collaboration with Embrapa in Brazil, and they were very interested in our study, and they were soil specialists. So in Brazil they have a very important problem that we don't have in Argentina. They have low levels of potassium. And we found, we didn't publish this, but we found important associations between, for example, potassium and the isoflavones contents in the seed. And there are studies showing how fertilization, for example, can affect the chemical composition of the grain. We don't have studies about that. We are very interested on, but my only experience was with that data set, and it was impressive, the result, because they have very different soil than us.
I see. Thank you so much. Sorry, please allow me to repeat my second question. My second question is that nowadays, especially perhaps in Northern American and European countries, there has been a call for sustainable farming practices, such as perhaps intercropping is more common. Sometimes there is the reduced of agrochemical applications, and perhaps reduced tillage, or regenerative farming, etc. So may I ask, what is the current paradigm in Argentina? Do farmers know of these so-called sustainable farming practices, or are there any revival of traditional sustainable farming practice, etc.? Thank you.
Okay, now I caught the idea. So, well, I understand that intercropping, among the factors that you mentioned, that they are advantages in the factor that you mentioned, also are very important because allow to capture, or in another way, the intercropping allows to, yes, be more efficient in the capturing the different resources, light. You don't waste solar radiation because you have always the soil covered with crops. So among the things you mentioned, it also helps to improve the use of natural resources. In Argentina, we do rotations. Yes, we don't do every year the same crop in the same land. We are farmers are now being very conscientious about this, and they rotate the crops. So this summer they do, for example, soybean. The next one they do corn, and then they do wheat, and then so they rotate their land. In Argentina, farmers have big farm, yes, not a small one, big farms, more than 3. A mean productivity area for a farmer is 30 300 hectares. So they have to do the things good, because otherwise, and they, among other practices, they don't use tillage. They don't move. Since a long time ago in Argentina, the farmers don't move the soil. It's tillage zero. Rotation, tillage zero, and with the fertilization is controlled. And now with the nowadays technology that have been used more and more, that is the agriculture precision, you know. I don't know if I'm saying this good in English, but you understand what I mean, the digital, the agriculture precision, so they can monitor the condition with the machine, when they sow or when they harvest or when they want to control any pest, they go with the machine and they can see a site-specific situation to manage the spot with the problem, not apply to everything the same if they have the problem. I am not sure if I am being clear, sorry. I can try to improve. Just tell me if you understand what I mean.
Thank you so much. Oh, you explained it really, really well and very clear. I'm just very impressed by the fact that in Argentina, so many important sustainable farming practices have already been implemented, especially for no tillage and also precision farming. So that's just really impressive and great to hear as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you very much.
So Coty, I want to follow up on that. So for no-till farming, is it necessary to use GMO, the herbicide tolerance one, or you can use a non-GMO to practice zero tillage?
Yes, if you ask me personally, I have been working with no transgenic for a long, all my career. But what you're saying is that if GMO are good for improving this, can you repeat, because I didn't understood. Sorry,
yes, for zero tillage, right? So usually after you sow the seed, you spray. I mean, when the weed come, right? So you spray the herbicide, but the herbicide tolerant soybean can survive. So that's how most people practice zero tillage. Yeah. So
yes,
for GMO,
yes,
okay. Yeah.
That encouraged also the increase when I was talking about no transgenic, but now I understand. Now, that what you mentioned, it in fact what explains this figure, no? Because you see, it have increased a lot. Well, the last growing season are exceptional, but because we have some decrease, but it has been increasing steadily. And this is because the GMO and the thing that you mentioned, with no tillage, the GMO are very, very important because they reduce the pesticides, and it's easier to manage for the farmers. It's easier than the conventional soybean that I was talking about. But at the same time, what I was trying to say, I'm sorry because perhaps my English is not very good, but also this is very important. Personally, I believe that we have an opportunity also with the conventional soybean that are starting very slowly to gain some market in our country, because what I personally believe, I insist on that, so you don't take that as it's something that I think. We need to, the only way to expand the production of soybean in our country without taking or bringing additional land, because that would be very bad for the environment, is producing a special soybean for a special market. That's why I mentioned that in the last message. So with the transgenic, it's okay, but with the conventional soybean, I think we have a great opportunity in two ways: to use this non-transgenic to broaden the genetic basis of GMO. You know, the varieties were almost improved for the yield potential without caring about the seed chemical composition. And we have a great opportunity with chemical composition. So we can improve the variation of the transgenics with the non-transgenics, and at the same time we can use directly these non-transgenics for niche market demands, nutraceuticals, for example. And we have a lot of work to do about that, because we are not doing the homework well, I think.
Thank you. So is there any other questions from the audience? You can unmute yourself and talk, or you can raise your hand. Okay. Yeah, so Coty, so the student who asked you questions, Sandra, are you really interested in studying the effects of soil on crop growth? So she may contact you later to ask you more questions about Argentina.
Yes, and I can share with her some things that I can expand what I have explained to her about this relationship between the isoflavones, for example, or share some reference bibliography as well. Yes.
Okay. So yes, Katrin, do we have a poster to show the next talk?
Yes, please wait a moment.
Okay, so Coty, please stop the sharing on your side.
Yes, so sorry.
Yeah, so it's the time to advertise the next talk. so Katrin will show your poster for everyone to see who's interested in the next talk. But I think today's talk is very fruitful. We have been talking about basic science for a long time, but real field production with complex factors, climate, soil, etc., is very challenging. Okay, so so the next one will be on December 13th. So the topic is about insect management in soybean. So this professor, Professor Pan Neal, he has very interesting study about the fragrance from flower. So he studied the volatile compound coming from flower and the major control. And now he's studying the volatile compound like terpene that might affect the insect resistance. So he's going to talk about the possibility of managing insects by using plant volatile compounds. I think this is going to be an interesting talk. So if you are interested, please join us next time on December 15th. Okay, now let's thank Coty again, and hopefully we'll see her face to face in Hong Kong soon, right?
Yes.
Next year, right? So yeah, I try to organize a conference and invite all the old friends to come to Hong Kong again. Okay? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so see you everybody. Bye-bye. Bye for today.